From Gladstone to Gardner, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
You know, I'm all about looking out for people who have lost their lives. I think that's obviously an important thing to do. But I saw this post yesterday from Kansas Congresswoman Sharice Davids, and I'm like, man, this is really not the point. So Sharice Davids posted this on social media. She writes here, in 2024, at least 32 transgender people were killed in this country, including Kidda B from Kansas City. On Transgender Day of Remembrance and every day, we must commit to ending all hate and violence. Okay, totally. Absolutely. I agree with those sentiments. However, it is very disingenuous to suggest that transgender people who were killed in this country last year were killed because they were transgender. Kidda B, I looked up the story, and I don't remember this story from last year, May of 2024. Kidda B died in a hit and run in the 3200 block of Independence Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. 46 years old, well known in the community. And as I was reading through stories, there was nothing that suggested that Kidda B's killing was in any way intentional. She was someone who was hit in a hit and run and tragically lost her life, but it had nothing to do with the fact that she was transgender. She was hit by two cars on the night of Friday, May 3rd, as they drove west on Independence Avenue near Independence Plaza, according to police. The driver of the first car, a silver Chevrolet Silverado, has not been identified by the police. Police are no longer searching for others involved in the crash, according to KCPD. The department classified B's death as a pedestrian fatality hit-and-run accident on that Monday night and publicly identified her as the victim. So at no point was KCPD saying this was like an anti-trans thing. It was just a tragedy, is what it was. And this person happened to be part of the transgender community. What this really was about is it being the 39th fatal vehicle crash in Kansas City up to that point in 2024, per KCPD. That's what it really was about. But even the Kansas City Star piece I'm reading from last year, May 7th of 2024, they write here, about half of all trans and genderqueer people murdered in the United States are black transgender women, according to the Human Rights Campaign. Well, this was not a murder. What does that have to do with the story? It's irrelevant. They're trying to take these stories and combine them into something that they're not. A person getting killed in a hit and run is tragic. That person who happens to be transgender is a separate tragedy because somebody lost their life, but it has nothing to do with their transgender status. Yeah, I mean, this makes sense, right? This is pretty much common sense. But when Sharice Davids puts this up yesterday, on Transgender Day of Remembrance, we must commit to ending all hate and violence. Okay, fine. But Kidda B in Kansas City was involved in a hit and run, and that's who she brings up on this day. Someone who's not in her district and somebody who was tragically killed in a hit and run. I mean, make it make sense. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But this is how they try to tie all these things together, put a bow on it in a way that doesn't actually make sense, and hope that you just buy it and hope that you just fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Meantime, I mean, you go down a laundry list right now of people who have been tied into major national stories of violence. You have the shooter in Nashville at the school last year. You have Charlie Kirk's assassin, who was deep into that community. I'm not sitting here telling you that everybody involved in that is some type of violent person. That's not fair at all. I wouldn't suggest that. But there's a lot more evidence that cuts that way than there is evidence that cuts the other way. which is what you're seeing on social media posts like this from Sharice Davids. That is just very disingenuous, but also is trying to portray a certain political message that these people are somehow at risk and being targeted violently by people who disagree with their lifestyle. And that's just simply not true. And you can tell that based on how Sharice Davids is backing up her story. And the one example she's using is a terrible example to use that doesn't actually make any sense. 913-408-7957, text line and studio line on KCMO. Now, the Congresswoman also posted something here yesterday about health care. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I mean, they are really trying to double down on this health care thing. The party that brought you Obamacare is now doubling down on health care is too expensive. So the Congresswoman posted yesterday, families are staring down massive health care hikes because Congress has not acted. The Senate is moving and the House must too, writes the Congresswoman. She says here in this letter to Mike Johnson, Dear Speaker Johnson, we write to you once again about this urgent matter of the Affordable Care Act premiums and the enhanced premium tax credit set to expire at the end of the year. For the past 50 days, you have kept the House out of session while millions of Americans worry over how they'll be able to pay for their health care bills in 2026. The notion that Mike Johnson kept these people out of work, they couldn't go to work, John.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah,
BS detector. Beep, 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 beep.
Oh, man. Yep. Signal the BS detector right there. Thank you very much. She goes here, in voting to reopen the government, writes Congresswoman Davids, Majority Leader John Thune is guaranteed a vote on extending the Affordable Care Act in the Senate. We respectfully demand that you hold the same vote here in the House as soon as possible. Families on both sides of the aisle are counting on us to do something to mitigate rising health care costs. Yeah, and it's not about, with all due respect, Congresswoman, it is not about dumping more taxpayer monies into it. Now, where Republicans have failed massively is they've never had a good answer for health insurance. Never. 15 years of Obamacare. They've never had a good answer for health insurance. But for Sharice Davids to take the approach of, we demand that you allow the Affordable Care Act extensions to continue, save the people. You guys create a problem. It becomes unaffordable because when the government gets involved, it always gets worse and it always gets more expensive. Then you subsidize it. And then when people are like, boy, this system's not working, we shouldn't really subsidize this anymore. You say, you're taking health care away from the American people. You created the mess that we find ourselves in. And I stumbled upon this clip, and I shared it yesterday on my X account at Pete Mundo. It is Dave Ramsey, who you hear weeknights at 10 p.m. on KCMO Talk Radio, talking about the increasing costs of Obamacare. And this goes back to 2016, almost 10 years ago. Dave Ramsey said this on his show.
To say that Obamacare is an unmitigated economic disaster is an understatement. When the cost to cover someone, a group of people, goes up, that insurance companies have two choices. One, go out of business. Two, raise their prices. The people that put Obamacare together either had one of two agendas. Either they were absolute economic morons, or they fully intended to destroy the health insurance industry and completely put them out of business so that the government would be the only provider of health insurance. Let me explain to you what's happening, okay? We told you that because of Obamacare, that health insurance rates were going to go through the roof. First piece of data I got was from my state, and my state's just indicative of the other states. Obamacare has cost my tiny little company millions, with an S, of dollars already in increased health care cost. Now, when a little company like mine that has 600 team members is cost millions of dollars, there's a real simple effect to that. That's money I don't have to hire people with because it's going to stupidity. And so you want to slow down job growth. You know, you suck money out of the economy with a vacuum cleaner called socialism on some kind of trash like this. But now get ready. It's not over. Blue Cross Blue Shield in the state of Tennessee is the largest insurer, and they are announcing today a 62% increase in premiums for next year. If your blue jeans, if a gallon of milk, a gallon of gas all went up, 62%. You people would be storming Washington with pitchforks and torches. But you know what Americans are going to do? They're going to stand back and look at this and yawn because it's coming through their companies, and they get the bill, and they're just like, oh, my God, my health insurance went up. What am I going to do? I can't afford my health insurance. And it's all because of Obamacare. It's because socialism does not work.
Dave Ramsey, 10 years ago, talking about this topic. And here we are 10 years later, still dealing with the mess. And you have Sharice Davids here in Kansas demanding that Speaker Mike Johnson have a vote on extending the taxpayer-subsidized disaster that has become and was always going to be Obamacare. John in Grain Valley. What's up, John?
Good morning, Pete. On this wet Friday, since I'm in a bad mood, allow me to vent for a few minutes. Sharice Davis and all the other ones just like her rely on their undereducated, uneducated, 30-second TikTok brain voter base to say, wow, yeah, you're right. They can't do research. They won't do research. She can't. She won't. They knew this was a mess. They never fixed it. They had opportunities. Everyone told them this was going to happen. It's the same thing that's going on in a lot of these cities when we had the finger quote undocumented workers. When they start arriving in your city, rents go up. Why is that? Because you just dropped 20,000 people into a city that only has room for 10,000. And oh, by the way, when the government comes in and says, gee, no worries, we'll pick up the slack. And then the owners go, wait a minute, you mean you're going to pay the difference? It was the same thing with the diabetes medication. The companies still charge $600 a shot or whatever it was, but they only charged the consumer $200 and paid the $400 to the company. So then the company said, well, that's now an $800 shot. And they said, oh, okay, no problem. You don't have to pay. You're still paying $200.
Yeah.
We'll just pay these companies $6. So every time you transfer a cost over to somebody else, that's like someone picking up the bar tab. You go, oh, wow, if I'd known that, I would have drank in a good Sam Adams as opposed to Bud Light. It's the same difference. And eventually, like Margaret Thatcher said, you're going to run out of people's money. We're $38 trillion in debt, approaching $40 trillion. We don't have the money. And until people start waking up and understanding that all these economic dots are connected, do a little research. Matter of fact, let's try this. Ask the question, why is that? What is that? What does that mean? In other words, invert back to that wonderful 5-year-old self that you had when you asked mom and dad, why is that? What does that mean?
Thank you, John. Thank you. I got to rate you. I know you're on a roll, man. You're on a roll. But if you talk any longer, I'm gonna have to put your name on the show. All right? It's gonna be the Pete and John in Grain Valley show. But I get what he was going for, and he's fired up on a rainy, dreary Friday morning. But it's Friday, brother. All right? It's Friday. Enjoy it. It's a red Friday. Got to beat the Colts on Sunday. But you're right. On the text line, Pete, Dave Ramsey has no idea what he's talking about. Neither do you. Why do they have record profits, Pete? Why do they have record profits? Because the government's subsidizing all this nonsense. That's why they have record profits. It's not because of the private sector. You have a small handful of companies. This is what happens when the government gets more involved in anything. You have a small group of very powerful companies that basically create a monopoly. That's what you've got right now. That's what's happening in real time. We've lived through it. There is less competition. The big guys are getting bigger. That's why they have record profits. If you think this is helping out the little guy, the small business, or the smaller health insurance company that maybe was more regional up until Obamacare, you're kidding yourself. It took away the marketplace. It took away competition. When the government gets more involved in almost anything, this is always the end result. And we are living through it right now in real time with these Obamacare subsidies, the costs going up, and the fact that if the government doesn't bail it out, that cost, which has skyrocketed, gets passed on to the people. That's what we're seeing. Our 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour is next. Bill O'Reilly at 8 o'clock.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
All right, it is time for the 6 at 6.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, I thought this was appropriate after I got my ticket yesterday. KC area drivers can expect to see increased law enforcement presence throughout Thanksgiving week. Oh, you don't say. After my speeding ticket yesterday. Douglas County Sheriff's Office and the Olathe Police Department both announced yesterday that they will increase their presence from November 22nd through Thanksgiving weekend as part of the Thanksgiving Safe Arrival campaign. And they likely aren't the only departments increasing patrol, according to Channel 9 KMBC. Law enforcement officers will focus on seatbelt usage and impaired or distracted driving on both highways and county roads. And I would just say those major thoroughfares as well. I told the girls I got my ticket yesterday, got home, and I think they thought I spent the day in jail. They were very confused by the whole thing, but I explained to them that, no, I was not in a jail cell all day. Don't worry.
Number 2.
All right, next up, Arthur Bryant's closing for emergency repairs. They announced on social media that a water line broke on the second floor of their 17th and Brooklyn location, causing a minor flooding incident. The owner said the restaurant closed to allow crews to fix the dining room ceiling. The restaurant also needs time to dry out before it can begin serving customers again. They plan to be closed for several days. An exact date to reopen has not yet been announced.
Number 3.
Well, there was a shelter in place yesterday for parts of Johnson County, and it has been lifted for residents of New Century and Gardner. This after a building containing hazardous material caught fire last night. This was just after 5 p.m., a building at 300 Prairie Village Drive in New Century, and the fire was put out. No injuries reported, but crews did advise that those in parts of New Century and Gardner shelter in place as a precaution due to hazardous material found in the building. The shelter in place was lifted at 9:15 last night.
Number 4.
Next in the 6 at 6, the KCK board voting yesterday to name a local baseball field after slain Sheriff's Deputy Elijah Ming. The Wyandotte County Baseball Park that sits at 10th Street and Parallel Parkway in KCK will now be named in memory of the fallen Sheriff's Deputy. It was a unanimous vote yesterday, as we obviously predicted, to rename Heathwood Park Baseball Field in honor of Elijah Ming, the Wyandotte County Sheriff's Deputy who died in the line of duty last summer. Residents can expect a ribbon cutting to be held next month, and we'll tell you the date on that as soon as we get it. We do not have a date on that. Elijah Ming played at that field. He also played college baseball on scholarship at Wayne State University in Detroit after finishing his associate's degree at Fort Scott Community College here in Kansas, where he played football. He's born and raised in KCK. He spent his youth playing at that field, and now that field will be named in honor of him.
Number 5.
And next up in the 6 at 6, well, a name has been picked for the new giraffe at the Kansas City Zoo. 14,000 people voting online, and the winner is Benny. Benny takes the cake. Baby Benny, born on November 4th at the Kansas City Zoo. I liked Slim. The options were Benny, Slim, Chester, Mosey, Anderson, and Patch. I was a fan of Slim, but Benny won out.
I wanted Patch.
Yeah, I know. You are a big Patch guy. Did you have an opinion there, John?
I'm good with Benny, but I kind of like Patch. That's
Okay.
cool.
All right.
Skinny seems obvious, right?
All right. Well, Patch wins in this show at least. But I would have gone with Slim. But it's Benny. Benny is the name of the new giraffe at the zoo. And last but not least,
Number 6.
legendary Notre Dame football coach Lou Holtz announced yesterday at the age of 88 years old that he delivered his final public speech after decades of coaching and speaking. He said here, "My commitment to the American dream has never wavered and never will. We must protect what makes America exceptional. We cannot let God down. We must always do what is right." That in a social media post from Lou Holtz. Your 6 at 6 in the books. Kendall Gammon on a Red Friday next.